Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the ISO, I'd like to welcome you to the Storage Design and Modeling State of Charge Management and Capacity Awards stakeholder call to discuss the proposed modifications to the Market Operations Business Practice Manual, the red lines for which were posted on April 4th. My name is Elena Kopilov-Alford, representing ISO Stakeholder Affairs, and I'll be facilitating the web conference today. I'm joined by Sergio Duenas-Melendez, Storage Sector Manager and Market Policy Development, Dinesh Dasgupta, Policy Developer, and Fan Zhang, Principal in Power Systems Technology. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, these materials are available on the Storage Design and Modeling Initiative page. You can get to that page from our website, uatikiso.com, navigate to the Stakeholder Center tab at the top, and then select Policy Initiatives, and that'll take you to our main Policy Initiative landing page. And then you can navigate to the Storage Design and Modeling page, and the latest documents will be at the top of that page. For a couple of housekeeping reminders, the call is being recorded for informational and convenience purposes only. Any related transcription should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. And the meeting is structured to stimulate dialogue and engage different perspectives, so please keep your comments professional and respectful. And please try to be brief and refrain from repeating what's already been said so we can manage our time efficiently. To raise your hand, make sure you first open the participant and chat panels from the bottom right of the WebEx screen, and the raised hand icon is nestled in at the bottom of that participant panel. If you dialed in outside of the WebEx, you can press *3 to get into the question queue, and just remember to say your name and affiliation before asking your question or making your comment. If you need technical assistance, you can send a chat to the event producer. Today's event producer is Ahmed, and you can find them under Intelor Events. And then you can send your questions to us in the chat to all panelists, and we'll read it out loud and address your question. For the agenda today, Sergio and Dinesh are going to go over the discussion for those proposed modifications to the Market Ops BPM, and then we'll wrap up at the end of the meeting with next steps. And here I'm going to hand it over to Dinesh.
Great, thank you, Elena. Hey, everyone. So just a recap of where we're at right now. So the Storage Design and Modeling Initiative has been tackling a wide array of topics. In prior discussions and written comments, stakeholders have expressed support for the ISO addressing known issues with expeditious resolution timelines. Right. The SOC management and awards topic has been identified as one of those issues that fits into this category via our public stakeholder meetings back in December and February. And we thank you very much for your support of verbal and written comments, especially in response to the February 20th presentation going into details on this gap. So next steps here, the ISO plans to submit these targeted draft business practice manual changes as a proposed revision request, a PRR, to the BPM change management process later this month. We will target implementation as soon as possible, likely May, given the importance of this gap and ability to execute these changes. So you'll see both that and also some of the slides that we will be going through later today. You've seen this information before. This is something that we talked about before. And we thank you very much for providing feedback at those meetings as well. So this meeting is a courtesy policy review ensuring policy clarity on these targeted changes. Comments on this process will be open from April 29th to May 13th. So that's in the BPM change management process. There will be another market notice from the BPM change management team on this topic. On April 25th, we plan to have another stakeholder meeting, and that's the one that's going to delve into the broader initiative with focus on both that March issue paper and straw proposal and any other topics that are up for discussion. Please save comments that are not focused on these targeted draft BPM changes until then. Okay, Sergio, please take us away.
Thank you, Dinesh. And before we move on from this slide, I'd just like to add, we know that there's a lot of issues that fall in that category of known issues that are amenable to expeditious resolution. And we're moving on those other fronts as well with the paper that was recently posted. But we thought that this particular challenge we'll talk about today is it's going to be helpful to, start the conversation a little bit deeper with this call. We're doing it to socialize our thinking here, and there'll be an opportunity as well to comment, as Dinesh mentioned. So thank you for making the time, and we can get going then with the next slides. So if we go to the next part, this is meant to provide some context as to why we think the particular design gap that we'll talk about today should be resolved in the near term. Today, energy storage resources provide the majority of upward FRP, as you can see in this graph. It's a trend that includes some seasonality. If you look at the data between March and June, but overall, it's pretty prevalent that LESR resources, as denoted in this graph, are providing the majority of upward FRP. In the next slide, we also show that that is a trend that is consistent across all hours of the day. So search resources are supporting the procurement of FRU throughout the day, throughout the year. And what we've seen generally in prior conversations around the pricing challenges related to FRP is that these resources being quite responsive are pretty prevalent, but also we've also seen that there's an interaction between FRP and state of charge that before was perhaps more manageable, but now it's become pretty apparent that we should try to address. In the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about that more clearly and its implications. So today, we have a series of state of charge formulations constraints, as we've talked about in the initiative, the kind of working group meetings of the initiative. But those formulations are not considering the impact of flexible ramping product awards on state of charge. Today, as we've shown, a large share of FRP, primarily FRU, is procured from storage resources. The fact that the SOC calculation is not considering the impact of providing FRP means that awards could end up being unfeasible, could end up being impossible to deliver due to the inadequacy of the state of charge of those resources. So this has a couple of implications. First, it has a clear price formation implication that is well related to the issues that already have been documented around FRP. The fact that we're not limiting awards based on state of charge, it creates, a condition where seemingly there's a very, very abundant supply of FRU, leading to the prices to be artificially suppressed. This also has market efficiency and potentially reliability implications as well. If there is not enough state of charge to be able to support the FRP awards, then the market will need to procure additional energy from other resources. That's, putting a pressure on the bid stack, and it has the potential to increase prices as well as create, the need for additional work, decision-making, and attention in operations. So it does create a concern that is material. How does this kind of materialize? How does it look? So in the 15-minute market, the market is accounting for the state of charge impacts of energy and ancillary services to ensure that dispatch instructions are feasible. But right now, this is not including the impact of FRP awards. So when the market is clearing for all of these products, including FRP, it does it for all intervals in the horizon. And the goal would be to make sure that all the awards issued for that horizon can be supported by the state of charge throughout. Since FRP is not included, storage resource may be dispatched for energy and AS in a manner that it becomes impossible for the state of charge to actually support FRP awards through the remainder of the market horizon. Again, as I mentioned before, putting pressure on other resources, pressure on the bid stack, potentially increasing prices and creating operational concerns. So how does this look like based on the data we've seen? In typical summer conditions, this gap can be quite material, representing up to about 60% of awarded FRP being unavailable during the peak hours, as you can see here. This is not intended to, represent an outlier day or a particularly challenging day, but more so a typical summer day. So in light of this situation, what are some of the concerns we have or issues that we see here? Well, since there's much more storage capacity now than ever before, we definitely want to ensure that the awarded FRP to these resources can be deliverable. This lack of modeling also has had an interplay in pricing for this product, which we know is a known concern around FRP, and it has material implications in terms of operations. So we want to address this issue immediately ahead of this summer, and we believe that the solution we'll discuss in the upcoming slides is one, addresses this interplay. Oh, sorry, I think it went back. I can control the slides from the top here if that works. Yeah. So, we believe that what we'll discuss in these upcoming slides addresses the piece on SOC for FRU, which is kind of the area we have the utmost concern at this time. And, it's something that is manageable, that can be achieved ahead of summer, instead of, having a more difficult conversation around potentially not allowing storage resources to provide FRP. So this is kind of an alternative that we think we can achieve that mitigates the issue as we've described, and it does not, foreclose the option of further discussion beyond the summer, but we believe that it's a needed solution ahead of summer, short of more draconian measures or more material changes as well to how FRP can be provided. So maybe before we go into the modifications, there's a question. Maybe we can take that question before we go into the red lines.
Yeah, let's go to Don Trethewey.
Hi, Sergio. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks for bringing this forward.
Hi, Don. Don, can you make sure you say your affiliation first before you dive in?
Sorry. Don Trethewey with the California Energy Storage Alliance. So thanks for bringing this forward. We agree with you that this is something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. I would note, though, that this has actually been an ongoing issue with the flexible ramping product that's been dealt with, in several instances where, in essence, the market optimization continues to outsmart us, and it continues to find the ability to award the flexible ramping products to resources that don't have an opportunity cost. And so if a storage resource can't discharge because its SOC wouldn't support an energy schedule, the market says, oh, great, I'll award that storage resource FRP because there's no opportunity cost. And we saw the same thing occur with congestion before we went to the nodal approach. So I think what the key, I think when we're thinking about the problem we're trying to address here is, how do we make sure that we don't allow the optimization to award to basically seek out zero opportunity cost? Because if you can't dispatch it for energy, you absolutely can't dispatch it for FRP. And if you go back to the overall objectives of the flexible ramping product, A storage resource should be completely indifferent to being discharged or held for FRU. So if the resource was making $10 in profit being dispatched for energy, if it was given an FRU award, it should get $10 payment for its FRU. And that would give it to make the storage resource completely indifferent as to whether it was being discharged or providing FRU. And I think we need to keep that in mind when we think about the solutions that we get into. And I'll save comments on the solution later, but the key issue here is the market optimization, since it's seeking out the lowest cost solution, which is resources without an opportunity cost. And unfortunately, when you don't have sufficient state of charge to be discharged for energy, the FRU looks like it's free to the optimization. So thanks.
Thank you for the comment, Don. I see Alva raise his hand in the middle of that. Maybe it's to chime in on a similar vein. So maybe we can go to Alva.
Yes, it is to chime in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, Don stole my thunder, but I did want to bring up, and this is, and similarly, this is Alva's photo from PG&E, by the way. I'm in agreement that this appears to be a good solution in the short term, and it's necessary. But I think one potential direction that should be looked at for a longer term solution is to enable capacity bids to be put on flexible ramping product so that the issue that Don identified can be managed to some extent by market participants. I don't think that's an appropriate matter for this initiative. But I do, like Don, I think, the repetition of this effect of the market model naturally going for wherever there's no opportunity cost on flexible ramping, and then finding flexible ramping where it doesn't exist. It can happen again, or it may still happen to some extent. So I think it's something for CAISO to consider in a longer term solution for this. And thanks to Don for expressing his idea more clearly than I could. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alva. Yes, and I want to, underscore that, we're in agreement that further discussion and more thought, both internally and with the stakeholder community, will be needed moving forward. What we're thinking of now is probably something that can be seen as an incremental improvement that can help us weather with more confidence the upcoming summer. And ideally, we can build upon that and keep working on it beyond the summer so as to, have more and more confidence on the price formation pieces of FRP in general, but also on its operational performance as well. Don, your hand is still up. Is that a new hand or an older one?
Older one.
Okay, great. Thank you. Perfect. So I'm not seeing any other kind of hands internally, either from my fellow panelists or the attendees. So I'll then go over the red lines that we published, and then we'll pause again for questions. Okay. So we are proposing a couple of modifications to section 7.8.2.5 of the Market Ops PPM, and another tiny cleanup matter in a different section that is in the next slide. So let's start with the stored energy management for NGRs in real time. Basically, this section initially, made an allusion to how state of charge is modeled in day ahead, and how it is outlined in a different section, 6.6.2.3, and restates some of the formulas included in that 6-point, etc. Section. What we're proposing to do here is note that there is a difference, a material difference, that in real time, the real-time interval state of charge does consider the impacts of flex ramp upwards, and we've included that that factor here in the second formula in the screen, right before energy. The other addition is that we've included this inequality that must hold true, that was not initially included in this section, although it is applicable since we already had a reference to the SOC formula in this section. So we want to include this clarity that the underbar SOC, that the SOC must fall between the underbar and upper bar SOCs. This is really the core, the quid of the modification we're talking about today, the inclusion of FRU, but in developing these red lines, we also found a quick cleanup item that could be done in section 6.6.2.3. This is the section that describes the same equations, but for day ahead, and we noticed that this formula that ensures that SOCAT follows between underbar and upper bar SOC, we noticed that those under and upper bar terms also had the AT superscript, which they should not have. So we will just strike that out for clarity, since those other terms, upper and underbar SOCAT, are not defined in the BPM. So this was a minor error that we want to correct with this change too. So
it looks like we have a new hand from Don too, Sergio, when you have a minute.
This is the perfect time. So let's go with Don.
Don Trethewey, California Energy Storage Alliance again. So I do actually have a concern with this approach. I would note that when we added the attenuation factors for regulation, we added the attenuation state of charge, and then lo and behold, we realized that it had price formation issues associated with doing it. So we had to reinstate the original state of charge constraint to minimize that. And then I would also note that you don't have the down products impact of SOC in here. So I think you really need to test this a lot more than you probably have, because I think it's going to cause the market to go, the optimization to do some pretty weird mental gymnastics and interact both the down product and the up product. Because again, it looks like it gets free energy associated with the flexible ramping up, or uses free energy with the up. So I really caution taking this approach. Again, it's when the fact that down isn't in the attenuation factor constraint shows that it's actually not a robust solution. And I can understand why it's not in there, because if you actually had both up and down in the SOC AT formulation, the market, usually if you're like in a hard upward ramping situation where there's big up ramping needs, the FRU price will be positive and the FRD price is going to be zero, because you can get as much flexible ramping down as you want, because you just wouldn't dispatch at the advisory level everything you're moving up. And so what it's going to see is that I can award an FRD to get a free FRU. And so the fact that as Alba pointed out, since there's no bid cost, the market's going to buy as much FRD as it possibly wants to, because there's zero cost to it. It would drive the FRU price to zero. And so you basically, it wouldn't solve anything if you had them both in there. And I think, but again, that doesn't mean that this is right. The fact that you excluded it because putting it in means it won't work. I think it means that the whole concept is wrong. And what that why the concept is wrong is actually in the title of this initiative, where you're talking about SOC and capacity awards. And I think this is a mistake a lot of people miss with the flexible ramping product. The flexible ramping product is not a capacity product. It's energy. It's just energy you want for the next interval. And so if you think about it that way, you come to different solutions that would actually solve this problem, which is you don't want to award FRU if you can't, if you wouldn't be able to award energy. And so if you treat the two the same, you can come up with a different approach that actually, I think, solves your problem even on a longer term basis. But this one here, I think it's going to cause all kinds of odd interactions because you just put half of the FRP in an equation. And the FRP is key to actually correct price formation in the multi-interval optimization. So you're impacting that as well by not having the down. And so I'll stop. I'm happy to share an alternative approach that hopefully would be implementable by summer, but I'd rather turn it over to others to see if they have concerns with what's actually being proposed here or supported.
Okay, let's go with Alba first, and then we can talk about some response to that and some the alternative you alluded to. Don, thank you. And Alba, if you're speaking, you might be muted.
Sorry, I hadn't been unmuted yet. I would have to say from the perspective of the slides you showed and the sort of the alternative you suggested might be hanging over us at the beginning of the presentation, which is that you simply exclude batteries from providing flexible ramping. I don't think that's a good solution. I think you're going to really cause a shortage in that case. So I'm more inclined to say, yes, there's some testing that's needed here to make sure you don't have kind of negative prices on flexible ramping that people are forced to pay, which was the effect that we saw with the attenuation factors previously. But I think Don nailed down why you can't have both services in this formulation at this point. So I think he's made it clear that that can't be the solution. I did want to suggest that maybe what he's looking toward and what might be a sufficient solution is to simply, rather than putting the flexible ramping product for all the periods of the SOC, simply putting the binding FRU award, if there is one, into the SOC constraint might be sufficient. And I'm curious whether that's kind of the direction he's going, because that seemed to me almost an equally simple solution that would then essentially only constrain the actual award to be something that would be feasible without leading to other effects. And I will admit right away, having said that, that these things are very much knock on, and that may also then create further problems. But I am sort of the opinion that this seems reasonable. It's a way of essentially restricting CAISO to procuring either energy or flexible ramping product in the same way that they currently procure only energy. And that seems like a reasonable way to make sure that that there's not flexible ramping product that is not deliverable in general. I think there might be unforeseen cases here, but I think those need to be kind of drawn out a little bit more to explain why we wouldn't take a solution like this, which in my mind kind of makes sense on the face of it. Thank you, and thanks to Don for raising the issue.
So I see I'm still unmuted. I think then I'll unless there's other people with questions, I'll provide what I think the alternative would be. And Alba was very close to what I would recommend. which is you implement a constraint that says any FRU award has to be, has to be less than or equal to the amount of SOC necessary to actually have converted it to energy in the binding interval. And you can hold, and I think you can do it in all intervals, actually, that same logic. And so, and that's where I'm saying you're treating it. That's why I kept saying it's not a capacity product. You're treating it just like energy. You need to say, oh, if I actually deployed it was going to deploy, if FRP and energy are the exact same thing in the binding interval, that's how you get the price right. And so what you would say is, well, if I can't award energy, I can't award FRU, and that's what that constraint would do. And it's a single constraint that says, if you have to convert the megawatt awards to megawatt hours so you can compare the two, but it's simply the FRU that I award in the binding interval has to have SOC as if I had awarded it as energy. And you can do the same thing for the down, where you add another constraint there that says 1 minus the SOC. The down has to be less, any FRD award has to be less than that. And so that's what you keep saying. You treat it as energy. You don't even need to know what the SOC impact was on it. You just simply know that you can't do both at the same time. I mean, in essence, if you think about what you're doing right now, is if you can have FRU and FRD both be awarded at the same time, but really, can you be dispatched up and dispatched down at the same time? No. But there can be periods when you do have the ability to do that. But we're trying to get the issue to address the issue at hand, which is the market found a zero opportunity cost because the FRP, the amount that you would, if you actually used it at energy, you couldn't sell the energy. So it said it's zero cost and put all the FRP there. So I think that actually realizes what the problem we're trying to solve, which is make sure that the market optimization doesn't see that there's a zero opportunity cost when awarding FRP.
Can I say something, Sergio? Sorry.
Let me just ask a quick clarifying question, Alba, very fast. So what I'm trying to hear, what I'm hearing from you, Don, is update, like there are kind of three things to do. Update the first formula, the SOC formula, to reflect the impacts of FRP.
No.
And also ensure.
I wouldn't adjust any of the SOC constraints. I would simply ensure that there is sufficient energy available in the binding interval, or sufficient SOC in the binding interval, as if I had awarded FRU as energy to discharge.
But you also mentioned this piece of kind of focusing or limiting that in a given interval, it's only in one direction. Am I right?
That's different. I think that this is a more robust approach, because if you put, as Alba put, if you put FRD in the SOC AT constraint, you would now have to put in some other constraints that says you can't award both at the same time for the offsetting reason that I said. But I don't think you need to take that approach. I think if we back up and ask the fundamental question about what FRP is, and we treat it as energy, you can actually address this issue where the market sees no opportunity cost when it should see that there is one.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Alba, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would have, it seems to me that if energy is being represented in the SOC constraint for all these intervals, then your statement, Don, would imply that FRU would also have to be represented in the constraint. Otherwise, it's not being treated as energy. So that would be one concern there. The other concern I would have with that approach, and I'm not saying this is all sort of in the area of brainstorming, so it might be a perfectly workable approach, but I would think there's a fairly high probability that will lead to shadow prices that are much higher, and they're more like the energy prices, and sort of exactly because of the reason that you're talking about. If you're treating FRU as energy, then that's going to be the opportunity cost. to procure any FRU from storage. And so when that constraint is binding, you could find yourself experiencing much higher prices than are really justified. I do think flexible ramping is a capacity product. It's available for dispatch or not in the next binding interval, and then potentially for future intervals. So while I think your points are need to be accounted for, I think there has to be some capturing of the effect of this on future intervals in order to even do what you're suggesting.
Yeah, no, and Alva, I agree that I had that similar concern. And I think that the key there, and I was trying to find the FRP formulation, but I think the ramp formulation actually ensures that you're actually okay over the whole horizon. The whole point is you want to get the intervals where you know that the SOC can't support it as energy, and then stop the market from awarding FRU in that instance. So that is, it's trying to address that narrow issue in terms of the award. But again, that's why the point is we need to I don't think we need to, first of all, what's proposed here isn't a complete solution. We could try to find ways to make it potentially work. But I would recommend that we at least look further into addressing the issue at hand, which is truly the market shouldn't have awarded FRU if it can't be converted to energy in that interval. And I think that'll go a long ways to addressing the concerns that are being raised here. And ideally,
Sam has his hand up as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, so first to answer Don's question, yes, the issue is ongoing. It's been there since FRP is in production. And then actually even before summer, in April,
Yeah.
we have a few days, RTD get the price $1,000, and RTPT actually only like less than $100. And then for those interval, like in the morning, hour ending 7, hour ending 8, we did procure the flex ramp up like 3,000 megawatt in RTPT. So then the question is where those flex ramp up goes. It seems to disappear. So it's because of this modeling. So it go away. So if we don't have this in production before the summer, then the only way operator can handle that is to bias RTPT. So if you go to Oasis to see it, for April 2nd, we have the RTT price $1,000, and then immediately on April 3rd, you will see the RTPT bias went up. That's how operators do it. Yeah. So we need to do that. But how to model it, we had a discussion internally, say whether it's capacity or energy. And then, so we say, oh, yeah, it's capacity because you don't know if you need it, just like a spin, non-spin, and so on. However, to treat it as a capacity, we also need to be conservative. If we say, okay, only 1 megawatt capacity, we only use half megawatt, then you get into the risk, say when you need it, it's not there. So it has to be conservative. That's why we have to procure, just treat it like energy whenever we need it. But we cannot put it on the first equation there. It's exactly like energy, because there the discharging and charging energy will help each other in terms of SOC. And for this one, we cannot do that. So we cannot say, okay, FRU and FRD will help each other. We cannot do that. So that basically force us into something. If we really want to put FRD in, is we need to do the mixed envelope approach. Only treat FRU, FRD as in envelope. Everything else is not in envelope. but will that be able to meet in summertime? Right? And so that's why we take out the FRD, say, okay, let's address the urgent issue first. Then we come back to say, okay, how to fit the FRD in. Because FRD is not just for battery. Right now, for the majority FRU, it goes to battery. For majority of FRD actually goes to VER. So we like to discuss together, say, okay, what that mean to give FRD to VER. So we try to put those together, and then we also need your help, say, okay, how to handle that. Then we can do a one approach, like a one-time fix. So this, whatever the proposal here is not the end. It just try to give us through the summer.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for
so
that
Fan, I agree
background,
that you can't, can I make a comment? So Fan, I agree that you can't put both energy and FRU and FRD in either the SOC or the SOC AT constraints
Right.
for the exact reasons that
That's
they're
right.
going to be offsetting. My concern is that by realizing that that's a problem, but then saying it's okay if we just put one in and don't make any other changes, I think underestimates what the impact of just having one FRU in will have on down and how the market will dispatch everything. And that's why I was trying to see if there were ways that you could come up with a solution that would again not impact the SOC, but prevent the actual award of FRU and FRD when we know that they can't actually even meet it.
Sure. So the solution I could think about is basically say it's a mixed envelope. So I'm afraid that people here that will be nervous, say, okay, we don't want the envelope. Now you come out with something called mixed envelope. That's even what that animal is. So
I hear you, Fan, and I think that there are this should bring serious considerations of what the impact is going to be with imbalance reserves, because the same scenarios will play out. And one thing that's interesting is I had always remembered that reliability capacity, we were always assured that the resource would only be awarded in one direction. And so I went and looked at, I could found the Dane formulation, and I went and looked through that, and I was trying to find constraints that enforced that. And what I realized was, yes, you can buy reliability capacity up and down, but in RUC, there's only going to be one target. You're either going to have an up requirement or a down requirement. You're not going to have both. And the fact that you actually have two requirements for imbalance reserves and FRU is why we'll run into these problems. The fact that you have two requirements.
Yeah, that's right. You are right. So for the RUC, because the target is the forecast, so some unit will move up, some unit move down because of congestion and so on. But the IRU, IRD is for uncertainty, then it can have both up and down. So same here, FRU, FRD is for uncertainty, for future uncertainty. We have no idea where the uncertainty will show up and then which direction will show up. That's why we have to have both direction just in case they show up.
Right. So if you take the residual unit commitment logic and applied it to real-time FRP, the logic would be you should only have one requirement, and then you don't have these SOC equations would work.
Yeah, then it's not uncertainty. Then it's basically say, okay, it's a target. You have a forecast target with that's the RUC is a target is a shooting for.
Right. So I would note that this is not my preferred solution. I think you guys should really go back and look at just limiting the awards such that you don't award FRU if they don't have energy, if they couldn't have been provided energy. Put those two constraints in. But I think if you went down this path, you should turn off set the imbalance reserve down requirement to 0. I think you're going to get all kinds of weird interactions here that you haven't thought through. And that would at least mitigate
wait,
the potential for it.
you
It
mean
still screws up
the
forecasting
FRD,
movement.
yeah, FRD requirement for the whole system. Basically, we turn off one direction off.
Right.
Personally, I don't mind, but I don't know if that's a ISO policy. And
But you agree that that would address the concerns of having the FRD having weird impacts with FRU because of the fact that they can see that they can get, in essence, free energy
yes,
from FRU. To
yes,
basically
I agree, but
to change the SOC.
yeah, for the summer peak, we need FRU, but like recently we have overgen, so probably we need FRD at this, like during the solar time.
Right. No, I agree, Fan. That's why I think what I'm proposing is what you would prefer. But if you can't do that for summer, then it is what it is. But I think again, it's a pretty straightforward constraint to say I can't be awarded FRU if I couldn't have been dispatched for energy in the same interval. So as I'm saying, it's not adjusting any SOC constraint. You're putting limitations on what you can award, how much FRU you can award. And you could do, like I said, the same approach works for down.
That's what we are doing. The one we put the FRU in to make sure we have SOC to support FRU.
Yeah, I'm saying you don't need to do it through the SOC constraint. Do it through a separate constraint.
I think we've gotten to a point where it's a little bit circular, what we're saying in a way, because we definitely understand that we could think of other ways to enhance this piece moving forward, and we welcome that discussion and those alternatives as well. But I think, as Fan mentioned initially at the beginning of his comment, we've been kind of looking at this issue as, what can we do to get us through this summer, while also doing the most that we can do with the existing storage fleet. We wouldn't want to, negate the opportunity for the market to use the fleet for some of its requirements like FRP, but we do want to have more operational certainty to get us through the summer. We think this is a step in that direction, while recognizing that we can have, this kind of discussions, as you mentioned, of alternatives, Don. And I would like to also maybe go to Raul, who's had his hand up for quite a bit, very patiently. So maybe we can do Raul, Alva, and then go back to see if there's other comments.
Just a quick sound check, sir. Here, you can hear me?
Yes.
So I might be rehashing things, so you can just let me know, and maybe Fan, it's good to hear from you. So I was not able to open the PowerPoint presentation from the Kaiser web, so but I'm able to open the Word document that includes the BPM change, and all I'm seeing is, the only change is previously SOC was not reserved for FRU. So you could basically award FRU to storage and then immediately dispatch it because it's not being protected. And now you are adding FRU or reserving FRU on the SOC similar to AS. And since it's a real-time product, it's only in real time, no impact to day ahead. And what I'm hearing from Fan is there's no issue with FRD because FRD is abundant, considering, your VERS solar can always move down, but really cannot move up. So it seems like a pretty straightforward fix. Is this considered like an enhancement from the original FRP? This is something that was not envisioned in the FRP, like 101 or 201, or there's something else that led to adding this, and previously it was not. Hopefully, you see the nuance in what I'm asking.
Yes, actually, I agree with you. My personal opinion is this actually is a defect in the original formulation. Just need to be fixed. And then in terms of FRD, my opinion is we need to discuss with VER because without addressing the VER, actually your FRD price will always be zero because you have a huge capacity sitting there, right? But then if you ask, say, okay, what's the meaning to award FRD to VER? Is that means we need to curtail VER? So that need to be discussed.
Yeah, and in the natural sense, it's already happening, right? Like if you move from RTPD to RTD, and the only thing that's left is VER, you are essentially already curtailing it. It's
true.
It's not,
agree with you.
Since there is no opportunity to bid. Okay.
True,
yeah.
But if we formulate differently, say in the RTPD, we seize it, and then let's say you can shut down the resource instead of curtailing VER. Would you prefer to shut down the resource?
When
Rahul, we lost you. I don't hear.
Yeah, I think we lost Rahul's audio, even though it looks like he's unmuted. So Rahul, maybe you're double muted somehow?
other than did I lose?
We hear you, but your audio is cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that
maybe you
that
want to
was
restate that last sentence or two.
Now I was going to say, if the decommitment decision would already be made in RTPD, right? Like it's already included. If market thinks a resource should be shut down, it will shut it down. So I'm assuming it keeps the resource on and dispatches VER up.
But the current formulation doesn't give preference to shut down the unit.
Okay, let me think about this. But that's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alva and then Don.
Yeah, just it sounds like cans of worms are being opened up all over the place. But I sort of I'll give one other, and unfortunately this is too intuitive, but I think the reason I sort of like the CAISO's approach is it essentially looks at the kind of feasibility you're talking about, Don, but for all of the intervals. And I think that's particularly important when you think about how the flexible ramping product is in the formulation of both RTPD and then in RTD as it gets converted or not converted. They're both multi-interval problems, and I think it's important to have a simple way of sort of keeping track of whether you have whether you can essentially meet your current advisory solution. And it seems to me like you need something like this to be able to say whether the entire advisory solution to your real-time dispatch problems, plural, are going to be feasible. So I'm not sure that a single constraint like that is going to be enough to make the entire optimization consistent. I'm not sure of this, but I think there's the overlapping of the two sets of constraints is important to have a simple way of tracking whether they're both feasible.
Yeah, although in the document show one constraint, but actually there is an index T. So T can go from 1 to the end of a horizon. So it's every interval, including the advisory interval. And we need to do that because because here it's not the binding concept is we need to be able to commit the resource. And then for commitment, the binding is not just the second interval. It could be the third one, the fourth one, depends on your startup time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes the case even stronger in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alon. Don?
So this is Don Trethewey with the California Energy Storage Alliance. I must not have been clear. I would have enforced the constraints that I was recommending in the binding and the advisory intervals. Just similar to what Fan said, that these are all time T based on time T, and you would enforce those in every single interval, even the advisory intervals. And then one comment I would make with regards to the variable energy resources providing down. The key is they have to economically bid. So to the extent that they've economically bid, they've stated a willingness to curtail at a certain price, and it's usually negative, and that's why we see the zero FRP price. But getting into the unit commitment decisions that could occur in RTPD, that's one I didn't think about, but that's also going to be one where you could get weird interactions now by just including this in the SOC constraint. So I think if you go down this path, while I would advise against it, you should strongly consider not having a down requirement whenever you have this constraint, the SOC-AT constraint implemented.
For the VER, the DAC is for energy only. When we evaluate the flex RAM, no one has a flex RAM bid. Everyone is treated as a $0 bid.
No, that's right, Fan. But what I'm saying is if I self-scheduled, I can't be awarded FRP.
So you argue that way. Okay, that's a the policy discussion.
That's a current design.
You mean the current design means the VER, no stack B is treated as a sales schedule.
No, the VR has to be economically bidding. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to calculate the opportunity cost. It's not, you have to be dispatchable to be awarded the flexible ramping product. And self-scheduling is not dispatchable.
Yeah, so they are bidding, but those bids are only for energy purpose, not for the flex RAM.
Agreed. But that's why the flexible ramping product down, it would be zero. If I bid -30 and the clearing price is 0, then I have no opportunity cost as a verb, because I would have never been curtailed anyways. If the price was -$40 and you didn't curtail me because you needed to hold me for down, the price is going to be $10 for down.
Okay, that's a different discussion. Basically, when we evaluate the flex RAM down, you need to combine with energy together.
No, it works the same. It's working the same way as the up. It's whether your bid cleared out of merit, and the amount that your bid cleared out of merit is your opportunity cost. So the only way, if the LMP was -40 and I was bidding -30, you would never schedule me for energy, and I would basically, make $10 profit. And if you held me for FRD, you better give me the same $10. It gets back to my very original premise on the entire call.
But the LMP you just referred to is the energy LMP. What's the flex RAM price?
It would be $10. It'd be the difference. It would be the difference between -40 and -30.
No, flex RAM is 0.
No, it's based on the opportunity cost, Fan. Think about it in the up direction. If I bid $30 and the clearing price was 40,
yeah,
and you didn't dispatch me for energy, I lost out on $10 of profit. Agreed?
True, but that $10 doesn't convert to flex RAM.
It does. The flex grant price would be $10 if you held me for FRP. If you awarded FRP to me, the price would be $10. Or it should be. That's the whole point, is you want everyone to be indifferent to, you don't care whether you're scheduled for energy or scheduled for FRU. You earn the same profit.
Okay, we can discuss later on maybe.
Okay, I'm just seeing one raised hand left from Raul. Maybe that's an old hand, most likely.
Yes, let me put my hand down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Sergio, the way this platform works is the event producer can only clear all the hands once everybody's done. Otherwise, they kind of get wiped out. So.
Oh, one of the fun WebEx quirks.
Yeah, WebEx Classic. Yeah.
Okay, very well. Well, I'm not seeing other questions. I saw a couple of comments in the chat, but I think that has been addressed. So I'll then pass it on back to you, Elena. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's go to the next slide. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so as both Sergio and Dinesh noted, there are no comments. There's no comment period for today's meeting. There will be a market notice that's going to go out when that BPM change management process starts, and the window that they're going to open after that meeting is going to be between April 29th and May 13th. So those comments can go through their process. And our presentation is going to get corrected. It seems that the file is corrupted there, and it'll get reposted shortly to our initiative page. And you can send any additional questions, comments to ISO Stakeholder Affairs at kaiso.com. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, and this is just our meetings and links for the week. Next slide. And if you're looking for comment submission deadlines and trainings and market SEM, we've got all the links located for you here. And last slide, just our plug to sign up for the Energy Matters blog and receive your market updates. I have a hand from Alva. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, as I was looking at the schedule that you were putting up there, I wanted to, since it's not going to be, this is just going to be comments on a BPM, I did want to hope that Sergio would take, at a minimum, what Don was saying to heart in terms of looking towards DAME, that there might be a need to have something more robust in place for DAME. In other words, a year from now, rather than thinking of this as something that's going to be, simply bracketed and will be fine. I think the upward and downward imbalance reserve products do require that this be nailed down more when you get to DAME. So just a thought there, because it won't go into, obviously can't go into comments, that you might want to think about how to address that.
Yes, I appreciate that. I mean, I'd say that, within the context of our current initiative too, we do want to continue these conversations on FRP, also as it aligns with other initiatives like price formation. In terms of some of the comments too regarding imbalance reserves, say that a lot of the issues or challenges we're seeing, as Don mentioned before, with FRP, related to the fact that it's not a product with a specific bid included. But with imbalance reserves being biddable, that's a bit different. And, we also have that tool of the envelope equations that could potentially be further utilized for issues like this, including, I know that they have caused some questions, and it would be valuable to address them too, but, there are viable tools to set those bounds, and that allow us also to have this bidirectional kind of product represented while continuing for resources to earn revenues and participate in providing both. So, when we're thinking about this we're looking at this as, let's get through the summer and let's leverage the venues we have to continue, whether furthering this in forms of looking at the state of charge formula or, leveraging other tools like the envelope equations as needed. So hopefully that helps a bit on how we're thinking of it as of now.
Yeah, it does.
And, we always welcome any other thoughts. Shoot us an email. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's this concept of having a capacity bid for flexible ramping, especially for batteries. There have been some arguments made here that I think are, and especially because imbalance reserves can be, you can lose a portion of your imbalance reserve revenues if it's converted to flexible ramping, and if the pricing isn't right on that, or it's because of these constraints that you're losing revenues, then you probably need to have a way of representing the opportunity cost of that loss. So worth thinking about that. I don't think that can be done in terms of DAME, obviously, but I think having a direction for a solution is important.
Yeah, and one other thing to add, Albert, first off, thank you very much for your comments today. We'll make sure that the policy folks who are very much involved with the imbalance reserves are aware of your comments and this recording. Thank you very much for your contributions today.
Thank you, Dinesh. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your discussion and your input and viewpoints. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
This event has concluded. Thank you for using event services. You may now disconnect.